Welcome to One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers, where we get curious about what makes people tick. We're here today with Holly Davies, who is building the future of motorsport. Holly, welcome to the podcast.
Good morning, thank you.
Thanks very much for taking the time to come and have a chat
That's okay.
with me.
Quite an introduction as well.
Yeah. Well, I think as we go through it, I think it will make sense to people who are listening, isn't it? We're talking about the very, very foundations, aren't we here?
Yes. Yeah.
So, Holly, kick us off. Tell us about what you do.
Okay. I run a small not-for-profit education business, Venturi, teaching kids to code. But the reason that we're talking today is because I also run a community STEM project where kids are learning to design, build and race an electric car. They're fully self-sufficient. They do everything. And when we drop them off at the racetracks, we drop them off and that's them done. So it's really exciting.
And how many races this season so far?
Well, we've done one. We started at Goodwood, so we aimed high. We might have peaked a bit too soon. No, we've done one already, and we've got 5 that we've booked in the season. The series that we're in is designed for secondary school and primary school children, so a lot of the race dates are midweek, which doesn't work for us. So we've just booked in the Sunday slots at the moment.
Very
so
good.
5.
Right. So how many teams? How many teams at what ages then are you operating with?
We've got one team at the moment, aged 11 to 16. So the cars there's a 9 to 11 car, 11 to 16 and a 16 to 25. We've gone in with the 11 to 16-year-olds to start with.
Right.
And we normally have about 8 drivers per race for that. But as a community project, we've got over 20 kids and they are half. So 10 are probably in the 9 to 11 age range and 10 are 11 to 16-year-olds.
Wow. And what kind of a response are you getting to interest in that project?
It's growing every single week. We started the project in September with about 4 kids, and I thought, have I made a bit of a mistake here? It's going to be really painful. And every single week we get a message or some interest, or someone brings a friend along, and it's going from strength to strength. And we had the Jubilee street parties last week. We had a stall at ours, and again, sort of 10 or 12 interested students from there. So it's growing legs.
That's brilliant. Okay, well, so now let's see. How did you arrive here? So tell us the story, Holly, of how you arrived at what you do now.
Okay, so I have a pretty normal career history. I went to school. I'm local, so I'm Derbyshire based. Went to school. Did my A levels at Burton College, and then went on to. Oh, actually, I did my A levels at Burton College. Joined the Territorial Army because I wanted a job. Get a job at Sainsbury's, or you join the Territorial Army.
Yeah.
So I did that, which led to me taking a year out between college and university because didn't quite feel ready to go to uni. Took a year out, did a year in industry, which was incredible, making stainless steel pipes for potable water, drinking water systems. Went to university for 5 years, so I have a master's in mechanical engineering. Joined Rolls-Royce on their graduate scheme, which was brilliant. Worked there for 8 years. And during that time, it was incredible. And I saw lots of different things. One of the things that they allowed us to do was a lot of STEM ambassador work. So science, technology, engineering, maths. And that quickly became the part of my job that I loved the most. And I got the most out of it. It was the most rewarding. So when I had my first little boy in 2019, I went back to work. It was maybe 12 weeks before we went into lockdown, and they were brutal. They were trying to work a full-time job, nursery drop-off, start and end of the day, but everything else. And then we went into lockdown, and all of a sudden I was at home with him. And so when they started to offer voluntary severance, I said initially, why on earth would you take voluntary severance at this time? You stick with a job that you know. And 2 weeks later, I was saying to my husband, I think I'm going to take voluntary severance. I've got this idea for a company. And that was it, really. I think it was June 2020.
Right.
Handed my notice in and set up the company that I run, STEM Venturi. And then from that point onwards, it has been a fascinating journey of meeting lots of different people. And one of those was a lady called Katerina who got in touch with me. She was an ex-design technology teacher.
Right.
Used to run this green power electric car project in schools and said, I think we should run it as a community project and open it up to local students. So we started last September, and it's gone from there. Unfortunately, Katerina isn't running the project anymore, just due to various reasons. And yeah, we started with 4 students, and now we've got over 20, and it's absolutely incredible.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna go back a little bit. There's a couple of things that Territorial Army. I think in today's parlance it's now called the Reserves, isn't it? So yes.
Yeah.
So why?
I think I was at a point in my life. I'd been to a private all-girls school. Found school relatively easy. Passed exams quite easily and stuff. And just felt I needed to challenge myself. And I think part of that was going to college. So I left school at 16 and went to do my A-levels. And I just wanted to do something that was difficult and not normal. And I think this becomes a bit of a pattern through everything that I do. But I loved it. It was incredible. So I joined at 17, which was the youngest you could join at the time. Quite shy, didn't really speak to anybody. And they taught me all sorts. They taught me to ski, I learned to drive and push my body and my mind to its limits. It was a fantastic experience.
So I know one or two other folks who have done time in the territorials as well. And so did you have any particular discipline or area that you were interested in the territorial?
I joined the Royal Signals because they were the local unit, but actually that really appealed to me as well. So our main role, particularly as a reservist, would be to go in, if there was something like national flooding, we would go into an emergency situation and set up a emergency communications network for the fire service, the police and everyone, and we would support that in the background. And that's what I really like, the sort of problem solving aspect of you're given this space, turn it into an office, you've got 2 hours, off you go.
That's brilliant.
It was fantastic.
Is that something, would you recommend that to someone who's looking for a challenge?
I would do, yes. I don't know what it's like today. It's been through a few changes since I joined. When I joined, you're paid for it quite well, particularly as a 17-year-old. It has the physical challenge. And I think it made me stronger mentally because I learned what my barriers were and I knew I could push them. I also learned to sleep anywhere. So before that, I was quite fussy on sleeping, but I could literally lie down on your floor and fall asleep from there. But yes, I would recommend it. I never saw any active service because I was in full-time education. I was exempt from that. But you do have the choice to do that as well. So you can go and support your country in that way too.
Yeah, brilliant. It's really good. Okay, so then you talked about, so you're at Rolls-Royce and you're getting involved in the STEM work. What was it about that you enjoyed?
I liked that we didn't necessarily know what we were going into. If you signed up to go and speak to a primary school or a secondary school, you didn't know if the kids were going to be keen for the session, not keen for the session. And it was quite self-satisfying to go in and maybe have them a bit disengaged to start with, but bring a bit of industry and the outside world to them. And by the end, they were full of questions and they'd leave more confident. We used to do mock interviews, CV writing workshops, that sort of stuff. So I felt like for 10, 20 minutes, I was possibly contributing to their future or steering them, supporting them in some way.
That's brilliant. Yeah. And that was the thread then that started the idea that you've had now since Rolls-Royce.
Yeah. My husband used to volunteer for the code clubs, which are the Raspberry Pi free coding sessions that are everywhere up and down the country. He used to volunteer for one of those on a Saturday. And I had said to him at the time, I thought there was a business opportunity for something that bridged the gap between a free coding club run by volunteers who didn't always have the time to prepare. They were it was very ad hoc. They'd prepare on the night before for the session. So something between that and school curriculum.
Right.
Because it's an area that is the future, coding, that sort of thing. But he didn't want to teach kids. So we sort of shelved it, and that was a few years ago. And then when it came around again at the start of COVID, we sort of said, well, why don't I go and do that now? Because I know that I enjoy teaching kids. And when we used to do icebreakers and stuff at work, and they say, well, what would you be if you weren't an engineer? I always said a teacher. And I never made that connection until the pandemic. And I was like, oh, actually, I can make all of these things align.
That's really interesting.
Give it a go.
So that was probably part of your true self actually answering the question there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a trained endurance coach for athletics. So I've always done an element of teaching.
Right.
But yeah, this was the one step to actually go and do it.
Brilliant. So tell us a bit about HF24.
So it stands for Hilton Formula 24.
Okay.
And like I said, I set it up to provide a car for the 11 to 16-year-olds. And I did that specifically because I wanted to catch the kids that are making those massive decisions about their life at quite a young age. So I wanted to give them a space to come and learn some new skills, but also build a network of mentors, industry professionals, try and get some work experience links, because that's a bit of a nightmare pre and post pandemic.
Yes.
So that's why I picked that age category. In hindsight, what I probably should have done is seen which kids were interested and then picked a car to suit, because I had loads of 9 to 11-year-olds turn up and not too many 11 to 16-year-olds at the start.
Right.
So we meet on a Sunday morning in a workshop. We've been donated an incredible space by a company, LJM Compliance Solutions, that train people to MOT hybrid vehicles.
Okay.
So lots of synergies there already. We meet on a Sunday morning, 10 till 12. The kids come along with their parents. That was quite key for me. I didn't want it to be drop your kids off and it's childcare.
Yeah.
Everybody gets involved.
That's brilliant.
And then we go and race.
That's really good.
And we try and get guest speakers in. So I've got some ex-colleagues and friends from Rolls-Royce coming in to do some aerodynamics with the older kids.
Yeah.
We've had electronic engineers teaching them to solder. They've
Yeah.
got 9-year-olds pop riveting the aluminium sheets on the bottom of the car. They're getting hands-on and doing stuff that they just wouldn't have done before.
That's just brilliant. So just we talked in the intro about, sowing the seeds for the future of motorsport here. Do you think that in comparison to other sports, the barriers for entry into motorsport are higher?
I think finance is the one that pops to the front of my mind. The cost of getting involved in motorsport is phenomenal in all the different types of motorsport. We've got some of the kids that go-kart, and that's pretty expensive.
Yeah.
I think also it's one of those things that you probably, I don't know if I'm right in saying this, but you're probably only going to get into it if you already know someone that does it, if you've already been exposed to that world, because it's quite scary. They're fast cars on a racetrack. You've got a helmet on. It's a bit claustrophobic.
Yeah.
I don't know many kids who would show an interest without already having experienced a side of that.
Yeah.
So you've got to have a bit of money behind you somehow. You've got to know what it is that you're getting yourself into, and it's certainly a lifestyle. Once you get past a certain point, it's full on. It's not just turn up for a race for a few hours at the weekend. Yeah. There's all the maintenance. There's, if you have an accident, you need to fix your car for the next time.
Yeah.
So yes, quite a few barriers.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because it's one of those things that it's quite a visual entertainment. So I guess people's first exposure is, look at that. But to actually work out, well, how do I get into that? That's quite a gap to bridge, isn't it?
Yeah, huge. And also the mental gap of, I'm going to give it a go. I didn't come first. Why would I keep trying? Trying to get, if kids are used to thinking that if they need to be successful at something to be good at it, so they need to be winning if they're good at it, rather than everyone's quite evenly matched in terms of the cars on the track.
Yeah.
And it's that extra edge. It's either mental or some finesse on the driving skill, but you're still very good at what you do. Because
the reality is that they're not going to win as often as they don't win.
No, absolutely.
So there's actually quite a lot of life skill in that, isn't there, as well?
Yeah.
The other thing, I guess it also enables with what you're doing, people to realise that a career in motorsport isn't just the driver.
It's an enormous team of people behind. Yeah. And we were at the historic Formula Masters, I don't know if those words are in the right order, at Donington by invitation a few weeks ago. And we were in the pits with a McLaren race car.
Yeah.
But the kids were really interested to see the professional engineering team and sort of saying to them, is this your full-time job? I'm like, yeah, this is what we do. So I think for them, some of them are more interested in the racing itself.
Yeah.
Personally, I would prefer to be behind the scenes and making it happen.
Yeah.
But that was really good exposure for them. And then the guy who was racing was also off for a bit of physio beforehand, so he's got that element of the team as well. So yeah, it's and leadership and team working skills.
It is fascinating. I mean, with some of the stuff that we get involved with now, I spend quite a lot of time behind the scenes at Motorsport, and to actually watch all that work that goes in, the cars come in and between races it's broken or something's not working. So you can take that engineering problem that you might have had, in the corporate space, but you've now got 2 hours to solve it and get the car back out.
Pressure is on, yeah.
Yeah.
And when we were at Goodwood, the rules of the race are that the cars can't be powered down the pit lanes. They have to switch their motors off, and then they are pushed by a team member at walking speed down the pit lane. So you need a member at the start of the pit lane to meet the car as it comes in, and then the next driver ready to switch in.
Right.
And for the first few changes, I was standing there. I knew the car was about to come in. No other children. Where are the children? They're off at the sweet stand, or they're off trying to find their parents. No, guys. When someone's out on the track, we need at least 2 others of you here ready to do something. So getting that sort of team. It's
a machine, isn't it?
Yeah. I said to them next time, get a running order going so you know who's going to be where, and so even teaching them those sorts of things is good for their future careers.
Which, whether they go into motorsport or not, they are, you use the term life skills. These are life skills, aren't they? Absolutely. That's brilliant. What about, so these are electric cars?
Yes.
But if we think about motorsport as well, do you think the industry will move to electric?
I think it should, from a planet and resources point of view. I think there are still some pretty big gaps that we need to get over, both technology-wise and socially. I noticed the other day when one of the kids was in the car, I could hear them going vroom, 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 because it doesn't make the noise, does it? It's really quiet. So even stuff like that, because I mean, as motorsport fans yourself, you go to the track and you smell the petrol and you hear the noise. So the future of motorsport, if it does go electric, how do we get over those sorts of things as well? I think that's a bit of a leap.
Yeah,
to get to very quiet.
I'd never even thought of that, because you're absolutely right, and that's your earliest experience as a kid on a bike or something is you make the noise of the engine, don't you?
Yeah.
Let's try and make the noise of an electric motor revving up.
Yeah. There's nothing. So there's that element of it as well. But I think, we need to go through a massive shift away from diesel and petrol because we're just going to run out of it. It's very, very simple. It's a finite resource. But getting there with all the problems with the batteries and the range, which is getting better, charging stations. Do we know what happens when a battery runs out of its usable life and the cost of that? There are some big barriers to get through. It's chicken and egg, isn't it?
Yeah. It is interesting, and it's. We could have a whole discussion on that alone. But there was a very interesting article. I think it was Volvo had published it about the difference in carbon footprint between an all-electric vehicle and a hybrid vehicle, because they make them both down the same production line, and I found that quite scary. In that actually, it's the petrol vehicle has a lower carbon footprint for about the first 30 or 40,000 miles of its life, and it's like, ooh.
And if you look at any sort of engineering is the same. If you look at it quite a narrow view, then absolutely the facts, they would lead you one way or the other. But you need to have a holistic life cycle view on it.
Yeah.
Where do the parts go? Can we recycle components when cars reach their end of life? There's a much bigger picture to look at, isn't there? And a much longer time span to look at it all over as well.
And where do we get the stuff that goes in the battery? And as you say, what do we do with the battery at the end of it? Is there, even thinking about that now, there's opportunity for that kind of conversation, I guess, to be had with the kids participating. Do you get into that?
Yeah, we do. One of the first things they say when they get into the car, where are the pedals? There aren't any, because it's just hand operated. Where's the engine? So even trying to get them using the right words, it's not really an engine because it's a motor and batteries. We don't really call it an engine.
Yeah.
We do talk to them about energy. We've done some bits on renewable energy. The batteries in the car we charge via a solar panel. So we've got that conversation going on. And that's the bigger sort of element of this project. It's not just them racing. It's those bigger conversations and topics that we are trying to get them involved in. Having said that, they are quite aware of renewable energy and the technologies. A few of their parents have Teslas or hybrid cars, so some of them are aware of that.
Yeah.
And at school they are starting to touch on the subject, so it's starting to get there.
It's really interesting, isn't it? And I guess this is something which I think is quite fascinating about the project that you're doing here as well. And I'm just wondering your view on, is it easier to influence the people at this age, or to change the current generation?
Easier to influence the younger generation, because it's not just influencing the people. There's infrastructure, there's physical things that need to be influenced as well. I think if you try and spend your energy changing what we already have today, we'd end up retiring before anything was put in place. Whereas if you can enable and encourage them to be the change makers, and to start asking questions of their parents and of their peers, why we're doing things like this, why are we not, blah, blah, blah. That's the only, it's going to change.
That's brilliant. That's really good. And do you think of what you've seen so far? Can you see some budding future talent in? Can you see the next Lewis?
We definitely have some speed demons on the team. I think we've only done one race so far. We've done some practice events, so it would be remiss of me to say yes or no. Definitely. But I think it sparked an interest in some kids that weren't necessarily interested in it before. Some of them are definitely there because their parents are interested.
Right.
But it's really nice to see that they've got caught up in the project. Male and female as well. Some of the girls are really, really keen to drive, which is brilliant.
So paint us a mental picture of a race event. So what happens?
It's a full day to start with. We start at 7:30 and it finishes at 6, so it's a long day for them. We drop the car off at the paddock with all the kit. We've had all the tools and toolboxes and everything donated, which is brilliant. The race suits, everything gets lined out in the paddock. That's their space. Kids are dropped off by the parents. They go to scrutineering, so they check the car over, insert the batteries, off to scrutineering to check everything's right, driver briefing, and then they have a 90-minute practice session, and that is every single car that is there that day is out on the circuit, so it's busy.
Right. How many cars are we talking at an event?
We had 130 start at Goodwood.
Wow.
In their first race. It's busy. It's really, really busy.
That's a lot of cars.
And I deliberately put them on the back of the grid for that first time because I didn't want them to get caught up in the chaos at the front. So they're all out on the track. They practice, get a feel for the car, come in, and then they've sort of 15 minutes to swap the batteries, so a new set of batteries per race. Organise which order they're going in, and then out to the track. 90-minute race. It's endurance racing, not fastest start to finish.
Right, okay.
The aim of the game is to finish the race.
Right.
And to cover as much distance as possible. So it's about maintaining your speed, nice smooth driving, not foot to the floor, thumb to the steering wheel. 90 minutes, that's race 1. And then there's a bit of a break for lunch, and then race 2 is the same, another 90 minutes.
And do you change drivers during that?
Yeah, so at the moment, I think I've got 8 drivers for the next race. So what I'll do is split them into 2 fours, just to minimise. We had every driver out on the circuit at Goodwood, and that was good for getting experience, but it was a lot of driver changes. So I think we'll do 4 per race. They switch every however many laps that turns out to be. And once they're there, they are self-sufficient. I can be around them as a team leader. The rest of the parents are off spectating only. So if that car, if they have any issues, it's on them to fix. They need to be able to fault find the electrics. They need to be able to get the right size spanner out if they need to change a wheel. It's all on them. And they coped with it really well. They were so level-headed.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is really good.
Don't we? I wonder as adults whether we, if you wrote that down on a piece of paper and put that in front of a parent, I wonder whether they can't do that.
Yeah. And they're very resourceful as well. Sort of say, come on, this is what we need to do. And they're off. I'll do this, you do that. And for the second race, the first race at Goodwood, they were a little bit unsure because it's the first time they'd been out. The second race, it's first come, first serve on the grid. The race starts at 3:30. At 2:30, they were putting their helmets on. I said, what's going on here? They said, we're going to queue up to get to the start of the grid. No, you're not. Get your helmets off. You're not sitting in the sun for an hour. Get your helmets off. They wanted to be as far up that grid as possible. So their confidence between race 1 and race 2 had soared. They'd got race tactics. They'd organised their driver changes so that they had to do less fiddling about with the steering belt. And they came away from that race fully owning that car. That was then their car. They were proud of it. They wanted to upgrade the bodywork. They'd seen a few others that they liked the look of. They'd been able to speak to the teams. And they were being filmed by Sky News as well. So not only were they racing, they were being interviewed.
That's amazing.
I was very proud. I was very emotional by the end of it. Very, very proud of them.
Yeah. Oh, that must be brilliant. So many smiling faces as well.
They were buzzing.
That's amazing. And when's the next scheduled event?
19th of June. We're at the Lotus Test Circuit in Ethel.
Right.
Yeah, that's the next one. And we've got eight drivers coming across, and a few of the younger kids coming to spectate, which is really nice as well.
It's amazing. Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. I can't wait to see a race. I think it'll be brilliant.
They are. The atmosphere is incredible.
And is it all about that, or are there other things going on at the same time, or is the event the event is that
race? Yeah. Sometimes there are other stalls there, depending on which circuit it is, but it's all about them.
That's brilliant. Fantastic. So I'm going to ask you one more question.
Okay.
I ask the same of every guest who comes on this, and it's interesting hearing your story so far of the decisions that you took at different times, and I just wonder if we could make the assumption that we've got time travel sorted.
Okay.
And you got the opportunity to write yourself a note on a piece of paper, put it in an envelope, and leave it somewhere for the younger or earlier career Holly to find. What would you write to yourself, knowing what you know now?
I'd want to write something like, be true to yourself, or, this is me, the lyrics from the Greatest Showman song. Because I think at a younger age, I made a lot of decisions to try and gain approval or please other people. And it's only now, and I don't ever be confident enough to do it when I was younger anyway, but it's only now with a bit of life experience behind me, I'm probably making the right decisions for who I am and my personality and my morals and ethics. So yeah, be true to yourself.
That's brilliant. Holly, it's been a brilliant conversation.
Really good.
Thank you ever so much. And I wish you and the team all the absolute best for the upcoming race.
Thank you very much.
And all the future stuff. So that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that has been One Thought at a Time with Ian Travers and our guest this time, Holly Davies. If you'd like to find out any more about what this amazing piece of work that Holly's involved is, or want to reach out to us or any questions, please feel to do so on our social channels. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Please do enjoy our other episodes, and we'll see you next time.